ripped clean in half, falling like confetti into a stainless steel trash can. The man who did it, James Morrison, branch manager, tightened his Italian tie and smirked. "Did you think I was born yesterday?" he said, loud enough for the room to hear. Across the counter, a 16-year-old girl stood perfectly still. Destiny Williams. Brown eyes steady, hands unclenched, voice even. "That check is for my Harvard tuition," she said. "Issued by the Stevens Academic Foundation." James laughed. A few customers turned to look. "Harvard?" he scoffed. "I suggest you leave before I call security." He nodded at the guard. The guard hesitated. The receptionist, Sarah, looked uncomfortable. Destiny didn't raise her voice. "Mr. Morrison," she said, "even if my mother were a cleaning professional, I would still deserve respect." James rolled his eyes and waved her toward the door. The guard stepped closer and Destiny turned, walking away with the same calm she brought in. Outside, under a clear blue sky reflected in the bank's mirrored facade, Destiny tapped a message with steady fingers. "Mom, urgent. Exactly what you warned me about. They messed with the wrong daughter." What James didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was how many eyes were already on him. Not just the customers, and not just Sarah at reception, who quietly jotted down the time and incident number. The bank's security cameras recorded everything with audio. And what he'd done was more than rude. It was on tape. At a corner coffee shop, Destiny opened her laptop. She wrote the kind of email that leaves no room for doubt, a request to the Stevens Academic Foundation for a duplicate check, an official letter of authentication, and this time, delivery straight to the bank's president. Her phone rang. Harvard's advisor, concerned. "Destiny, your enrollment payment bounced." "Do you know why?" Destiny drew in a slow breath. "A misunderstanding," she said. "It will be resolved soon." Back at the branch, in the break room, James held court with a paper cup of coffee and a grin. "You should have seen her face," he told two colleagues, showing them a photo of the shredded check on his phone. "These kids think we're that easy to fool." Someone chuckled. Someone looked away, and Sarah, tired of the bravado, went back to her desk with a knot in her stomach. That night, under warm kitchen light in a modest two-story home with a perfectly tended garden, Destiny placed 2 coffees on a table covered in neatly stacked documents. Across from her, in a navy blazer, sat her mother, Regina Williams. 42, founder and CEO of Williams Tech Solutions. A self-made leader who had built an education technology company valued at hundreds of millions of dollars. And yes, one of the largest individual shareholders of First National Bank. "Harvard confirmed," Destiny said. "Duplicate check and the dean's letter are on the way to the bank president." Regina's expression hardly changed, but her eyes sharpened. "And the meeting?" she asked. 3 p.m. tomorrow, Destiny replied. Regina nodded. "Good. Some lessons," she said softly, "can only be learned the hard way." While James slept, Regina and Destiny worked. Emails, document scans, calendar invites. A civil rights attorney looped in. Evidence preserved, not revenge. Exactly something larger. Consequences with purpose. By mid-morning the next day, a man in a charcoal suit walked into the bank and stood quietly near the lobby. He wasn't there for an account. He watched, listened, noted a name tag. Dr. Michael Roberts, Civil Rights Counsel. He didn't announce himself. He didn't need to. At lunch, James was still riding high. Printed at home, he snorted to a teller, taking another triumphant sip. He didn't notice Sarah's worry. He didn't know the CEO's office had blocked off time. He didn't see the calendar invite with his name on it. What he didn't know was about to rewrite his week and the culture of his branch. At 2:39 p.m., James's phone lit up. "Mr. Morrison," said the president's assistant, "Miss Chun would like to see you immediately. It's regarding an incident yesterday." He straightened his tie and smiled to himself. A commendation, he thought. Maybe even a step toward the regional role he wanted. He walked onto the executive floor with a whistle he couldn't quite contain, and then he stopped. Inside the glass-walled office, Victoria Chun, the bank's CEO, seated behind a clean desk. To her left, a teenager in a white blouse and jeans, upright and unflinching. To her right, an elegant woman with the posture of someone who has nothing to prove. "Mr. Morrison," Victoria said, each word measured. "Please sit." The air felt colder up here. James sat. He tried to locate his old confidence and found nothing. "I need you to explain exactly what happened yesterday with this young woman." "I followed security protocol," he began. The check looked suspicious. "It was my Harvard tuition," Destiny said evenly. "I'm the youngest student admitted to my program this year." Victoria slid a folder across the desk. "This is a letter of authentication from Harvard's dean. The duplicate check has been delivered to my office." James's mouth opened and closed. Then, the monitor on the wall lit up. Security footage. High definition. James watched his own hands tear the check. He listened to his own voice, unmistakable. The contempt. The dismissal. The words he could not take back. "I didn't know there was audio," he whispered. "All branches have had full audio-visual monitoring for 2 years," Victoria said, her gaze steady. "You were trained on it." Regina stood, closing the small distance between them with professional grace. "Mr. Morrison," she said, "I'm Regina Williams, CEO of Williams Tech Solutions. We built the security system you're watching. And through our holding company, we own a significant stake in this bank." The color drained from James's face, and the room got very quiet. Dr. Roberts, who had been silent until now, placed a neat stack of papers on the table. "I represent Miss Williams and her daughter," he said. "We are prepared to file claims today, including discrimination in violation of federal law, the destruction of a negotiable instrument, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The damages we seek will reflect both the harm and the institution's duty to protect its customers." James's words tumbled out, disjointed. There's context. Regina didn't raise her voice. "Can you explain?" she asked, accusing a minor of fraud without investigation. Assuming her mother's job based on prejudice? Tearing up a legitimate check in front of a child who earned her place the hard way? James stared at the table. Victoria inhaled, then spoke with the careful authority of someone who had done this before. "Mr. Morrison, this is unacceptable and deeply disappointing. But this conversation isn't just about you. It's about how we make sure this never happens again." Regina nodded. "We're not here only for a lawsuit," she said. "We're here for change." She turned back to Victoria. "Here is our proposal." She counted each piece on her fingers, leaving no ambiguity. First, immediate termination for cause for Mr. Morrison. Second, mandatory, bank-wide anti-racism training developed with independent experts and funded by our foundation. Third, a $500,000 scholarship fund dedicated to low-income Black students, administered transparently with annual reporting. Victoria looked from Regina to Destiny, then to James. "The alternative," she said, "is litigation that will become public record, inquiries from regulators, and a story that will rightly hurt this bank's reputation." Silence hung for a beat. James felt the room tilt. He nodded once, then again. "I accept," he said. The documents slid across the table. His signature shook. Destiny approached him not gloating, not triumphant, simply steady. "The problem wasn't that I didn't look like someone who deserves respect," she said. "It's that you forgot everyone does." Outside, James walked across the parking lot carrying a cardboard box, a photo frame, a mug, the old phone charger that lived in his bottom drawer. He saw a Tesla glide by and noticed, for the first time, what he had refused to see yesterday, the quiet details. A simple Rolex on Regina's wrist, the latest generation laptop in Destiny's hand, the unforced confidence of two women who understood their worth long before he measured it. The next weeks brought something a story like this rarely brings: follow through. The training rolled out branch by branch, not a slideshow, but hard conversations led by people with lived experience. Policy reviews, mystery shopper tests, commitment to measurable outcomes. The scholarship fund launched with a clear mission and a transparent board, and applications poured in from students whose teachers wrote about grit you cannot fake. 6 months later, Destiny walked the brick paths of Harvard in a white lab coat that felt both heavy and right. She studied long hours. She emailed her mom late at night with research ideas about racial disparities in diagnosis and treatment, how implicit bias can delay care and change outcomes. Professors noticed. One invited her onto a study examining algorithmic fairness in healthcare decision-making. Another asked her to guest speak to incoming students about resilience that isn't bravado, but practice. At the bank, change was visible, if imperfect. Sarah, the receptionist who had spoken up, moved into a leadership role in customer experience. She pushed for small but meaningful shifts, making sure branches had clear complaint channels, posting customers' rights where they could actually see them, and rewarding staff not just for sales, but for service. Victoria spoke at a finance conference about what they got wrong and what they were fixing, naming the mistake without euphemism. A 16-year-old taught us, she said, that judging by appearances isn't just morally wrong. It's bad business. And James? In a one-bedroom apartment across town, he woke up before dawn and pulled on a uniform blue polo, name badge, comfortable shoes for standing all day. He scanned groceries under fluorescent lights and avoided the eyes of the former client who sometimes recognized him. In quiet moments, he searched for news on Williams Tech Solutions, on the scholarship fund, on the training programs other banks were now asking to license. He saw photos of Regina at conferences, of Destiny in labs, of students holding award letters that changed what they believed was possible. He thought about the word respect and how he had measured it wrong for too long, confusing it with status, with suits, with whether someone looked the part. He wondered when exactly he had learned to see people as risks instead of responsibilities. He remembered the moment the audio played on that big screen, his own voice bouncing back at him, and he felt again the cold shock of hearing his worst instincts out loud. 3 years passed. Destiny became the kind of medical student professors bragged about when no one asked. Pediatric cardiology called to her 2 words that meant long nights, tiny hearts, steady hands. Her research helped hospitals in 5 states revise intake protocols to reduce bias in triage and diagnosis. She still called her mom most Sundays, not to talk about awards, but about the mundane stuff: laundry, ramen recipes, the best pen for taking notes when you're left-handed. The bank's transformation wasn't perfect, but it was real. The scholarship fund had sent over 100 students to colleges that once felt out of reach. The training had become less of a box to check and more of a conversation people actually had. Victoria's team published an annual report with metrics, not spin. They celebrated progress and named the work left to do. One evening, as the sun set behind glass towers, Victoria stood at a gala podium to accept an award for inclusive leadership. "We got something wrong," she told the room. "We tried to fix it. And we learned that doing the right thing isn't a press release. It's a practice." In a dorm room miles away, Destiny watched the live stream between problem sets and smiled. This story could end with revenge. It doesn't. It ends with accountability, opportunity, and a lesson that belongs to all of us. Respect is not a reward for excellence. Respect is a right. The best answer to prejudice isn't another first. It's a light so bright that even doubters can see the way forward. Dignity is priceless. Justice has no expiration date. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And tell us in the comments, what real change would you want to see in your bank, your school, your workplace after an incident like this? Subscribe for more true-to-life stories about accountability, second chances, and the people who turn setbacks into something bigger than themselves.